Hi, friends. Happy Wednesday. I'm Janet Miller for those that don't know me. Tonight, we're going to talk about trusting the process. And so there's many processes going on in our lives, sometimes simultaneously, and we have to be aware of what is happening so that we don't hinder our progress or move out of the place that God has us planted. If we're able to hear God's voice, we can take it to the bank. And if we have a word from the Bible, we can take it to the bank. Because He is His Word, He became flesh and dwelt among us, right? Okay, so it helps even more if you can directly hear from God, and sometimes that takes fasting and prayer for a while to hear His voice. It's not that He's not speaking, it's that your flesh is in the way. Okay, so when I was in Ohio in 2012, I heard God say one day, "I'm going to lift you up over it." And I had no idea what He was talking about at the time. But 2 months later, I found that some tenants I had rented my house to, um, they um, they thought that they needed to get their deposit back after they broke my lease. And I had documented everything correctly. I had a great broker, and everything was crossed and dotted, and my contract was solid. And so we went to court the first time, and I got a judgment against them, and so I went straight to the recorder's office to file a garnishment, and he had already filed an appeal. So I had to wait a whole nother year to go back to court for the second time. And so that it was so crazy. Over $1,100 deposit is what they were trying to get. And they were spending way more than that, I'm sure, trying to get it back. But how many know that a fool and his money are soon departed? But anyway, so right after they filed the lawsuit, their attorney, his name was Carlton Gibson, he was arrested for embezzling $800,000 from his client. So suddenly they had no attorney. The first time, I didn't have an attorney. I had represented myself before in court, and I was perfectly all right doing it myself. I'm pretty tough, and so I had no fear about that. But anyway, so the second time after they filed the appeal, I had to wait a whole nother year. And so during that time, I got into fear, and so I asked the attorney who had been our attorney when the Lord wrote off $92,000 at the closing table. I asked him to represent me again, and so a year later, we went to court, and I asked my mother and my broker to go with me because they both had been in the house after the tenants left. And they said that the house smelled like smoke, but that there was nothing wrong with the house, which is what they were saying, because I had fixed everything that they complained about. Okay, so my attorney stood up to give a roll call, and crickets for them. There was nobody there for them. They were not even there. And so the Lord will delay your enemies. Okay, so they dismissed the case, and the judge said, case dismissed. And we turned around to walk out of the courtroom, We pull the door open and look who's standing there. They're right there. And so I tried to become fearful that afternoon because I was afraid that the judge was going to give them another chance. But they got there 2 minutes too late. Okay, so I was faced with the decision to let fear creep in, or I could trust God and trust the process. Okay, so I can't say that I was totally at peace. I was kind of a basket case. But anyway, so I fought with my thoughts all afternoon, and then I called back to the attorney's office later on. After I left the courtroom, I went to Verizon because my phone was acting up, and I sit down on those little couches that they have, and lo and behold, they come and sit down right beside me. They had no idea who I was, even though the Verizon people were calling my name out. They had no idea. And so it reminded me of David when he was in the cave and Saul was asleep and he had the chance to kill Saul, but he didn't. He just cut off a piece of his robe and he made fun of Saul. But anyway, so I took a picture of them sitting beside me. I don't know where it's at now. I tried to find it not too long ago. But anyway, so I was so close to them and they had no clue. And I can imagine how David felt when he was right beside Saul and he had the chance to kill them. He had the chance to kill Saul. But I wasn't going to kill him, but I can imagine the anxiety that he was going through. And then, he wouldn't touch Saul because he feared God. And he wanted God's justice more than he wanted revenge. And so I just prayed for them. And I have no idea whatever happened to them after that because I lost track. But yeah, so later on that afternoon, I had to go to the attorney's office for a closing because I wasn't, a real estate agent. And I asked him if he had heard something, and he said no, that the judge had not changed his mind. So, when David was anointed king in 1 Samuel 16:12, he had to wait quite a while until he actually received it in 2 Samuel 2:4. And so you can go back and read those. But he feared God and he trusted God to vindicate him, and he was victorious in the end. And so I wonder if him being anointed years before had made it easier for him to resist the temptation to kill Saul, or if it made it harder. I know that he feared God because in 1 Samuel 26:9-12, it says, "But David said to Abishai, 'Don't destroy him. Who can lay a hand on the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? As surely as the Lord lives, the Lord himself will strike him, or his time will come and he will die, or he will go into battle and perish.'" So David had trust in the Lord to vindicate him. And so I pray that you will trust the process and let God vindicate you too. I'm out of time. I'll see you tomorrow.